Hey guys, Fen here once again, and today we're going to be talking about the retrospect of The Legend of Grimrock. So after every episode I want to try and do a retrospective of a game that I've been playing. And more or less the point of that is to sort of talk about the game's strengths and its weaknesses, and basically what I liked, what I didn't, and then eventually give it like a score out of 10 or something. Now, as I take a sip of my black tea, I propose the question: is Legend of Grimrock 2 a trend setter? Maybe. So the big thing to keep in mind here is that Legend of Grimrock 2 actually revitalized the genre that is the dungeon crawler. The genre wherein where you move on a grid of blocks, where you can only move orthogonally, so up, down, left, right, as opposed to diagonally, which is, to the corners, an X instead of a cross. And more or less built the entire game's mechanics around that. Okay. So did it revitalize that? I'd have to say yes. In much the same way Harry Potter revitalized young adult literature, I kind of want to say that Legend of Grimrock revitalized the dungeon crawler. Now, in the past, I played games like Eye of the Beholder when I was a kid on like the Sega CD. I'm old. Where basically it was Dungeons and Dragons 2nd Edition. And this was fun. This was a very good game. This was a very good game, and we enjoyed it. Me and my brothers, we all enjoyed the game. However, it did seem to be lacking something, I think. As a kid, it was probably a lot harder than it was intended to be, because Legend of Grimrock, as, an old man, versus Legend of Grimrock 5-something years ago when it came out, is pretty big. But I do want to talk about that, just for a second. That is, Legend of Grimrock, as I just played it, was a lot easier than it was when I first played it. Part of that is because I probably did general builds instead of going, for 2 things to 50 and others halfsies. But at the same time, I do have to ask the question, was the game just harder in the beginning? The general answer to that is yes. Games are usually harder when they first come out, because your core audience will buy the game, they'll play it, they will struggle through it and say, that was amazing, holy crap! But then you have your more casualized gamers come in, and they play it and say, well, this is really hard. There's this one section I just can't get past. And that might be because they have a fighter. Don't want to insult my British viewers here. They might have a fighter, a rogue, and then 2 mages. Which sounds interesting until you realize that mages are sort of artillery. They're intended to give big attacks, sort of every now and again. You can't beat the game as a single mage, like it is possible. Two-Rum, by the way, is a mage, essentially. He's sort of like a mage fighter. But if you try with an unoptimal build, non-optimal, you try with a build that is not optimal, then you kind of run into this problem where it's very easy to get basically overwhelmed by just the game itself. Because the game expects you to build and play with a certain type of party. And I think I probably built that party without realizing it. I have no idea. It might have been a fighter, a rogue, and a mage. But it was probably a fighter, a rogue, and a mage. Typically, the designer's core party that they put forth is going to be the one that's most easily going to win the game. Without cheese or bullcrap. At the same time, it gives you a lot of freedom. So back to my point, Legend of Grimrock 1 as I played it originally was probably a lot more difficult than Legend of Grimrock 1 as I played it just recently. I believe the enemies did more damage. the puzzles were not simplified at all. There was that one puzzle, Snake Way puzzle, where you had to just move in specific ways. None of that is really explained in game. It's just some person figured it out and it said, "Wow, that's really cryptic," and they made a walkthrough with it. And most people got to that point and said, "How the hell do I beat this?" Okay, I don't understand. Is there a walkthrough? Yes, there's a walkthrough for this. Cool, I know exactly what I'm supposed to do now. And then they probably immediately closed the walkthrough because they got past the thing that was stopping them from progressing. And while I will admit I did use a walkthrough to get through the Snake Way thing, I did show you guys it. I forget what part it is. It more or less is just a really cryptic puzzle that, if I was playing on my own without, recording it, and I could waste 5 hours just trying to figure it out by brute force, okay. Or if I just sat down and thought about the puzzle for a few hours and then had some, insight that helped me do it, okay, that's great. But none of that stuff can be done when the only time I'm playing the game is on camera. So, the puzzles are either simple enough to be comprehended and understood and dealt with in some sort of way with, minor trial and error, or you're supposed to be able to think about them for a long time and then come back to them if they're not required to progress. But yeah, just that one puzzle. I used the walkthrough to get through it, and I think I admitted that in video. But anyway, back to my point. The game was easier back then. There was that one puzzle with Games Bane, which I did talk about. And the entire problem there is that originally you only had the 2 or 3 word description. You didn't have the second line. Because what it had was Games Bane with top of steel, which makes it far more obvious what it is. Originally it was just Games Bane. That's it. And people were confused as all hell at this because, Games Bane is a sword? So, I remember just brute forcing that with, okay, what items do I have in my inventory? Daggers don't work, swords don't work, bolts don't work. Well, nobody's an archer. Does a bow work? No. Let's go find an arrow. Then searching around for an arrow, and arrow, Games Bane, I guess it works. So, yeah, it's just how it goes. But anyway, yeah, Legend of Grimrock is, a fairly good game. It's so back to my original point, so I don't get off topic, and this becomes 4 hours or something. Legend of Grimrock, did it revitalize the genre? Yes. We can see this because when the game came out, there really weren't any dungeon crawlers like it at the time. If you wanted to play one of them, you went and downloaded something like Eye of the Beholder or Gauntlet. I believe the Elder Scrolls version. And then you more or less just played through those, and that was it. That's kind of what you had. There were a lot of third parties out there, but they were all old games. These are ones that were made a while ago. Nothing recent. So when Legend of Grimrock came out, we're able to say, okay, well, let's test this. Do people like this? And the people who really enjoyed the game were the people who said, wow, that looks like the games I used to play when I was a kid. I'm really interested in this. And they all get hyped over it. They all were watching it, following it. When it came out, they all bought it. I was one of them. But, so, we buy them. We check them out. The game's great. We're loving it. The very first time we played it, we all fell into little traps. We all realized that, okay, there's sometimes stuff hidden in pits. So we all jumped down pits. And, yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was very interesting for what it was. And so, what do you do there? Game's great. People are making mods for it. The map tools are made. And more or less people are reliving their Dungeons & Dragons days. There's a lot of people that I've met that really like dungeon crawlers. They played Dungeons and Dragons as a kid. They still play stuff like Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder or Shadowrun or what have you, World of Darkness, on Roll20. And they think it's amazing because, holy crap, we're getting together with a group of people. I haven't been able to do this since I was like 14 and, hanging out with a bunch of friends in somebody's garage or basement. I mean, that is really the community this game is built for, I would say. But at the end of the day, the game took off. The game revitalized the genre, and we can see this as now there are quite a few indie products that I've seen. There's a few Kickstarters, a few games in Greenlight that have come out that are just dungeon crawlers. And that's about it. And these dungeon crawlers exist more or less to capitalize on the work that Legend of Grimrock did, I want to say. And it's not very nice, but it's kind of true. They more or less are saying, hey, Legend of Grimrock is really famous. Well, not really. It was successful enough for these people to make a second one. Wow, let's try to cash in on that popularity. Because obviously, this is a genre that is not dead. Okay. Cool. I'm glad that it is revitalized. The idea of an RPG where you control 1 to 4 people is really good. It's really popular. I like it. I like the idea. But I grew up with those games, so of course I'm going to like them. So we then move on to let's talk about the mechanics of the game a little bit. So in Legend of Grimrock 1, experience is divided among the people who are alive when a monster is killed. Meaning a monster has an experience value of X, and then X is divided by the number of living characters when it dies. So what this means is that when some players said, I wonder if you can do a mage solo run in Legend of Grimrock 1. They just let 3 of their characters die to monsters and then just kept that one character of theirs alive. And people got to like level 17, level 18, level 19, I think. So because there's a farming area as well. And yeah, that sort of imbalanced the game because eventually they became these gods of death. So the developers when it came to Legend of Grimrock 2, they made it to where experience, there's just a flat amount, and everybody who's alive gets it. Per monster. Which I think is actually a fairly nice compromise, if you will. Fairly nice idea on how to do it. But yeah, I'm basically from Legend of Grimrock 1, when there was nothing like it, it sold like hotcakes. It was just extremely popular among people who were just starved for a genre, starved for a game in that genre. And now we see it everywhere. Well, not everywhere, but we see a lot more of it. There are actually games based on it. And I really do hope that they make a Legend of Grimrock 3. I hope Legend of Grimrock 2 isn't just the end. Partially because I love these games, and partially because, it's a genre that focuses on you strategizing your builds. Basically what it does is it focuses on the exact same points that Dungeons & Dragons and Pathfinder and tabletop role-playing games focus on. And it panders to that audience to an extent, so it is a niche game. But at the same time, people are going to pay for it. And, developers are going to get funded, people are going to pay for it. And as far as, I don't remember if Legend of Grimrock 2 went to Kickstarter, I hope they didn't. But I do like that they are building their games and modifying them to work on tablets. Because Legend of Grimrock 1 and 2 are games you could easily play on a tablet. They're games that really, if you're at work and you're bored, you can just do 5 minutes of Legend of Grimrock, playing it, and then, okay, I need to do work now. You just hit pause, turn your tablet on sleep or whatever, and then just start doing work. And then when you're out of work again and no work's coming your way, well, what are you going to do? You've already organized your office. I'm bored, Legend of Grimrock. Oh, I have work to do now. Sleep, do more work. So in that perspective, it's a great game. I can't find anything majorly wrong with Grimrock. It sets out to do a specific thing and does that specific thing very well. So, yeah, I mean, thanks for watching the retrospective. Thanks for watching the Let's Play if you watched it all. But if I had to give Legend of Grimrock a score, when Legend of Grimrock first came out, I'd have to give it a 9 out of 10. And it's not a 10 out of 10 because there are some extremely cryptic puzzles that require you to... There's two of them, essentially, that require you to either think about it... That require you to either, one, think about it just so much that it stops becoming fun. And don't get me wrong, like, I like thinking. I'm a writer, guys. Like, I tutor English and I'm a writer, and I'm soon to be an English professor. Like, thinking is not a problem for me. 2, you have to brute force them, which is never fun. Brute forcing puzzles is the worst. 3, you have to look up a walkthrough. When Legend of Grimrock first came out, there were people who probably beat it within a couple of days. And those people made walkthroughs. And then they said, this game is amazing, guys, see? And since they've already done the work, since they've already figured out the puzzles, they most likely, put the puzzles in the walkthroughs that they made, if they made one. And so we just see that if I was to take out those two puzzles, the forward puzzle that had, Games Bane in it, or if they were to have just at the very beginning had, better description on the puzzle itself, or, just something to give you more of a hint, then it wouldn't be hurting the score at all. It would just be fantastic. And the Snake Way puzzle, I don't know what they were thinking with that one. I mean, I get that they were giving you an item, but if you didn't go get that one specific item that tells you the instructions, you were going to be lost. You would have to brute force it, and that puzzle would be a bitch to brute force. If you had no way of knowing what the answer was, holy shit. I mean, good luck. So, if somebody missed that scroll or didn't understand the importance of it and just tossed it somewhere, they'd be done. Just done. It would just be a point where they cannot progress. They literally cannot progress without spending hours upon hours brute forcing a single puzzle. Now, luckily, you don't see that in Legend of Grimrock 2. You do see it with one puzzle, but yeah, you kind of have to brute force that one a little bit. Not much, but the instructions are made a lot more clear, and it does more or less tell you that it's for... I do believe it tells you that it's for the entering the cemetery area. So, from that perspective, it's not that bad, but still, like, just those puzzles in general. I get what they're trying to do, but it would be better if the content back there behind those was optional. It was like a challenge area, or it's a really cool area. So without those two puzzles, Legend of Grimrock, when it was released, is a 10 out of 10. Just as it is. When it was initially released, it was a 10 out of 10 regardless, because it was the only thing that did what Legend of Grimrock really did at that time, which was a puzzler exploration, combat game. It's just how it goes. But if we were to say, okay, what about... And I mean, come on, the combat is great in that game. Granted, the trees are not obvious at the very beginning. That was one of my criticisms of it. But I don't think you could really do much with that, because everything goes to 50. So, he kind of shot himself in the foot there. Which is why the developers of Grimrock 2 did simplify it to just 5 points instead of 50, and gave you more trees, split things up more. But yeah, with the other games out, with Legend of Grimrock 2 out, Legend of Grimrock 1 drops to like an 8 out of 10. Even with that, the just absurd puzzles. Without the puzzles, it's still an 8 to 9 out of 10. Simply because, Grimrock 2 more or less does everything that Grimrock 1 did, but better. It doesn't have, major amounts of bullcrap. It's bigger, has more enemies, I believe. It looks nicer, to the point where it actually starts to slow down people's rigs. And it's just an all-round more complex game because it has more classes to choose from. Granted, you can just play the pre-made group that is supposed to just beat the game with the most ease, but you can make trick groups if you really want to that aren't balanced. Whose entire jobs are just go in, kill everything with no problem, and then leave. You can do that. They exist. But usually the moment you run into something that's immune to physical or immune to this, you're screwed. So, yeah. There is that. But, yeah, I don't want to get into talking about Legend of Grimrock 2 here, because this is intended to be the Legend of Grimrock 1 retrospective. But it's been about, 20-something minutes. So, I think I'm going to call it here, guys. But yeah, Legend of Grimrock 1 is a great game. If you have not picked it up, the community for it's kind of dead. It's not huge anymore. The mod teams that were modding Legend of Grimrock 1 basically saw Legend of Grimrock 2 and said, Legend of Grimrock 2! So they all just jumped ship to Legend of Grimrock 2, which has a far more sophisticated engine. Or at least a more in-depth editor. There's multiple levels instead of everything taking place on just one level by itself. You can do more stuff. The enemies have smarter AI. Tons of stuff like that. Basically just all around better. That's all I can really say. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the Let's Play. I hope you guys are enjoying the retrospective, because it's not over yet. About to be, but not yet. And yeah. Hope you guys, I hope you all have a nice day. And I'll see you guys next time. Potentially for Legend of Grimrock 2. But maybe for something else. Who knows? Bye bye now.